They laughed in my face when I walked out that day. But trust me, they're not laughing anymore. I can still hear their voices, that fake office laughter echoing behind me as I slammed my badge on the desk and walked out. I didn't give a speech. I didn't explain. I just looked my boss dead in the eye, smiled, and said, "You'll regret this." Then I left. But let me take you back to where it all started, because I wasn't always this bold. Back then, I was the guy who stayed late to fix everyone else's mistakes, the guy who took crap from my boss and still said, "Sure thing, I'll handle it." And for what? A paycheck that barely covered rent and coworkers who treated me like I was the office punching bag. The company was this mid-sized tech firm. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at my job, really good. I was the guy they called when a project was about to fail. I'd step in, fix the mess, and save the client. You'd think that would earn me respect, right? Nope. My boss, Rick, imagine a wannabe frat boy in his 40s, hated me. Why? Because I made him look bad. He'd take credit for my work, then talk trash behind my back. One day, Rick decided to humiliate me in front of the whole team. We were in this big Monday meeting, and I had spent weeks preparing a proposal that could have landed us a major client. Rick stands up, interrupts my presentation, and says, "This is garbage. Who even let you handle this?" The room went silent. I could feel every eye on me, and then the laughter started, soft at first, then a few of them chuckled. It was like something snapped inside me. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just closed my laptop, stood up, and said, "You know what? I'm done." Rick smirked like he'd won. "You'll come crawling back. People like you don't make it on their own." That was the moment I knew I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to burn every bridge they thought I needed. I can still see that conference room like it was yesterday. The smell of burnt coffee, the hum of the cheap overhead lights, and that stupid motivational poster on the wall that said, "Teamwork makes the dream work." What a joke. That Monday morning meeting was supposed to be my moment. I'd spent 3 weeks building a pitch for a client that could have doubled our department's revenue. I'd run the numbers, designed the slides, even rehearsed my delivery in front of a mirror. This was my shot to prove that I was more than just the guy who fixed other people's screw-ups. The room was packed. Rick sat at the head of the table like he was the king of the world, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone while I started my presentation. I was 2 slides in when I saw him smirk. "Stop. Just stop," he said, throwing his hand up like I was some intern who'd spilled coffee on him. "Is this what you've been working on for the past 3 weeks?" I froze. "Yes, but if you let me finish, you'll see." "Finish," he cut me off. "This is crap. Who even approved this?" The room went dead silent. I felt my face burn as the other managers glanced at each other, some hiding smiles. My coworker Dan, the office clown, let out a quiet snort. That was it, the final nail in the coffin. "You know," Rick continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "if this is your idea of effort, maybe you're in the wrong job. Hell, maybe you're in the wrong career." Something inside me just snapped. I didn't say a word. I calmly closed my laptop, unplugged the projector cable, and stood up. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" Rick barked. I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm done. With you. With this place. I'm not wasting another second making you look good." The room erupted in whispers. Dan chuckled under his breath like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Rick leaned back, grinning like a predator. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. People like you don't make it out there. You don't have what it takes to run anything on your own." I remember smiling, not because I thought he was wrong, but because at that moment, I decided I'd make him eat those words if it was the last thing I did. I walked out with nothing but my laptop bag and my dignity. No plan, no backup job, just pure, burning rage. And that's when the real story began. The first few days after I quit felt like freedom. No alarm clock, no fake smiles, no Rick breathing down my neck. I slept in, ordered greasy takeout, and told myself I'd figure things out tomorrow. But tomorrow came fast, and so did reality. By the end of the first week, I realized I had barely 2 months' worth of rent in my account. I didn't have another job lined up. Hell, I didn't even have a resume ready. I'd spent years giving everything to that company, thinking loyalty would pay off. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I called my parents, thinking I'd get some moral support. My dad said, "Son, you can't just quit a job without a plan. You're not a teenager anymore." My mom was gentler but still worried. Maybe you should apologize and ask for your job back. Swallow your pride, honey. Even my best friend Mark didn't sound convinced when I told him I'd figure something out. Dude, I love you, but that company was your only steady paycheck. What's your move now? I didn't have an answer, and every time I thought about Rick and his smug face, my stomach turned. The idea of crawling back to him, begging for my old job, that was never going to happen. I'd rather live on ramen noodles and cheap beer. So, I did what anyone desperate would do. I took whatever odd jobs I could find. I delivered food. I helped a buddy move furniture. I even considered driving Uber, but my car was so beat up it barely made it down the street. At night, I'd sit in my tiny apartment, staring at my laptop, scrolling through job postings that all felt like versions of the same hell I'd just escaped. The thought of working under another Rick made me sick. I wanted something more, something that was mine. Then, one night, while scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a post from a former client, one we had lost because Rick ignored their feedback. They were complaining about how all the current solutions on the market sucked. And that's when it hit me. I knew exactly how to fix their problem. I had insider knowledge. I knew their pain points, what they hated about the competition, and exactly what would win them back. I sat up straight, my heart pounding. That was the first spark of the idea. I didn't have a company yet. I didn't have funding. But I had something Rick didn't. The drive to prove everyone wrong. And I was just getting started. That LinkedIn post kept me up all night. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I opened a blank document and started typing out everything I knew. Every complaint that client had ever made, every mistake Rick's company had brushed under the rug, every gap in the market we'd been too lazy or too arrogant to fix. By 3 a.m., I had 5 pages of raw ideas. It wasn't a business plan yet, but it was a blueprint for revenge. The next morning, I called my old friend and mentor, Jake. He used to work with me before quitting years ago to start his own small agency. He answered on the second ring. Damn, man. I heard you quit. What's the plan? Jake asked. That's the problem, I said, pacing my living room. I don't have one. But I have an idea. Remember that client we lost? The one Rick totally screwed over? I think I can build something better for them. Something that'll wipe that smug grin off his face. Jake chuckled. I've been waiting for the day you finally stop making that clown look good. Send me what you've got. I emailed him my late-night brainstorm, half expecting him to tell me I was crazy. Instead, he called back 20 minutes later. Dude, he said, this is solid. If you can pull this off, not only will that client sign with you, but you'll take a chunk of Rick's business too. He'll hate it. That was all I needed to hear. The fire was lit. The next weeks were brutal. I spent my mornings doing food deliveries and lifting boxes to pay bills, and my nights watching YouTube tutorials on marketing, branding, and building a business. My tiny apartment turned into a war room. Sticky notes on the walls, sketches on my kitchen table, late-night coffee, stains everywhere. I didn't tell anyone what I was really up to. Not my parents, not even Mark. I wanted the satisfaction of shocking everyone when I pulled this off. Especially Rick. One night, I was drafting my business name, and I couldn't help but smirk. I picked something short, sharp, and professional, the kind of name that would pop up in his inbox one day and make his blood boil. I didn't have much, but I had my laptop, a head full of ideas, and the one thing Rick didn't: grit. He thought I'd crawl back to him. Oh, he had no idea. Starting a business with no money is like trying to build a house with a butter knife. I had nothing but a laptop, a couple of free software trials, and my own stubbornness. But that was enough. The first thing I did was put together a simple portfolio using old projects I had secretly saved, work that Rick's company took credit for. I knew it was good because I'd built half their reputation on it. I launched a cheap, scrappy website that I designed myself, staying up until 4 a.m., watching tutorials on how to make it look professional. Days blurred together. I'd wake up early to deliver food, spend afternoons reaching out to potential clients, and stay up all night fine-tuning my business plan. I cold emailed dozens of companies, offering a better deal and better service than they were getting from anyone else. Most ignored me. Some laughed, but one responded. It was a small startup, nothing fancy. Their email was short. We like your pitch. Can you hop on a call tomorrow? I didn't even own a proper microphone, but I cleaned up my tiny apartment, threw on a shirt and tie with sweatpants, and pitched like my life depended on it. And it worked. They signed. The first paycheck wasn't much, but it felt like I'd just won the lottery. For the first time, someone was paying me directly for my work, not Rick. I reinvested every dollar back into my business, better tools, better branding, even a decent website domain. A few weeks later, I landed a second client. This time, it was sweet. Why? Because they were one of Rick's old clients, the same one he lost because of his arrogance. I didn't tell them who I was. I kept my name off the front end of the company. As far as they knew, I was just the founder of this new, sharp-looking agency that promised results. And when I delivered, they sent me more work. At night, I'd sit at my desk, exhausted but grinning like a maniac. Every email I sent, every invoice I closed, it all felt like I was taking a piece of Rick's empire away from him, brick by brick. And the best part? He had no idea who was behind it. Not yet. 3 months after I walked out of that office, my life looked completely different. My little side hustle had turned into something real. I wasn't rich. Hell, I was still living off cheap ramen most nights. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something of my own. My agency. Yeah, I started calling it that. Had 3 steady clients now, all through word-of-mouth referrals. And the sweetest part? 2 of them were old clients of Rick's company. Apparently, they'd gotten tired of being ignored and overcharged. I remember the day I signed my 3rd contract. It was late at night, and I was sitting in my dim apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee. When I hit send on that contract, I leaned back and laughed out loud. Not just because I'd landed the client, but because I knew this one was big enough to make Rick notice. See, I'd started hearing whispers. A friend of mine, who still worked in that toxic hellhole, texted me. Hey, weird question. You're not running some new agency, are you? Rick's losing his mind over some competitor stealing his clients. I smirked at my phone. I wanted to text back, tell Rick I said hi, but I played it cool. Nah, man, just laying low these days. Truth was, I was working harder than ever. I reinvested every dollar, better website, better tools, even hired a freelance designer to give my brand a clean, sharp look. I wanted everything to scream professionalism, the complete opposite of Rick's lazy, outdated approach. The turning point came when I got a call from a company I didn't even pitch to. They said, "We've heard about you. Our last agency dropped the ball, and people say you deliver. Can we talk?" When I checked who their last agency was, I almost spit out my coffee. It was Rick's company. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, some guy working from a tiny apartment with a secondhand laptop, and I was already beating him at his own game. That night, as I updated my growing list of clients, I realized something. I wasn't just getting revenge anymore. I was winning. Revenge isn't about swinging blindly. It's about precision. I knew Rick's company inside and out. Their contracts, their pricing, even the little shortcuts they took that annoyed clients but saved them money. I didn't need to break any laws. I just had to be better, smarter, and faster. I started by targeting their weaknesses. For example, Rick always overcharged for basic services because he thought clients were too dumb to notice. I came in with fair pricing and total transparency. Clients loved it. I also fixed the issues Rick never cared about: delayed deadlines, sloppy communication, cookie-cutter strategies. But I had an ace up my sleeve. I still had contacts inside his company. Not spies, just old coworkers who hated Rick as much as I did. Over a few beers, they'd tell me which clients were frustrated, who was threatening to leave, and where Rick's company was failing. I never asked for confidential documents, just the tea. And oh, did they spill. One night, I heard about a big client, a 6-figure account, that was on the verge of dropping Rick's firm because of his arrogance. I didn't waste a second. I crafted a pitch so sharp it could cut glass, offering them everything Rick wouldn't. 2 weeks later, they signed with me. That was the moment I knew I was in his head. A few days after the deal, my buddy texted me from the office. "Dude, Rick just threw his phone across the room. He found out, big client name, dropped us for someone new. He's losing it." I couldn't help but laugh. Every time I took one of his clients, I imagined his face turning red, his voice cracking as he tried to blame everyone but himself. Still, I kept my identity hidden. The new company name was sleek and anonymous. I wanted to grow my empire quietly, letting him suffer without knowing who was behind it. But the better I got, the more I realized something. I didn't just want to steal his clients. I wanted to destroy his reputation. And the perfect opportunity was just around the corner. It happened sooner than I expected. I got an invite to a major industry conference, one of those big events where all the top players show up to flex and brag. Normally, I'd never get in, but one of my new clients had a booth and offered me a free pass. I almost said no. I didn't want to risk running into Rick, but then I realized something. Why not? Why hide anymore? By now, my agency was making more money per month than I ever made working under him. I had a fresh suit, a sharp new haircut, and, most importantly, the confidence to stand tall. The day of the conference, I walked into that massive convention hall like I owned the place. Rows of booths, banners, people handing out business cards. It felt like a battlefield, and I was ready for war. And then I saw him. Rick. Same cheap suit, same arrogant smirk plastered on his face as he schmoozed with potential clients. For a second, I just stood there, watching him, remembering every time he'd made me feel small. Not today. I waited until he was done talking and casually walked over. Rick, I said with a calm smile. He turned around, already annoyed, like I was just another nobody. Then he froze. I could see the recognition hit him like a brick. Well, he said, trying to regain that fake confidence. Didn't expect to see you here. You working for someone now? Or still unemployed? I laughed softly. Nope. I work for myself now. Oh yeah. He raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Competing, I said simply. You might have heard of my company. We've taken a few of your clients. The way his face twitched when I said that? Priceless. You, he scoffed. You're the one who's been undercutting me? Please. You're nothing without this industry holding your hand. I stepped closer, just enough so he knew I wasn't bluffing. Funny, because it looks like I'm doing just fine. In fact, I've got a meeting with one of your biggest ex-clients in about 15 minutes. Maybe I'll say hi for you. His fake smile cracked for the first time. Thanks for the motivation, Rick, I added, leaning in just enough for him to hear. Without you, I'd still be wasting my talent making you look good. And then I walked away, leaving him standing there, speechless, with that perfect mix of anger and confusion on his face. For the first time in months, I felt untouchable. But I wasn't done yet. The real payback was still coming. A month after the conference, I got the call that would change everything. It was from a massive client, one of the biggest names in the industry. They wanted to switch agencies, and guess whose contract they were about to cancel? Rick's. The timing couldn't have been better. By now, my small team, yeah, I finally had a team, 3 freelancers I trusted, was running like a well-oiled machine. We were hungry, motivated, and ready for a big win. The pitch meeting was brutal. It was me versus Rick's company in a direct showdown. We both had to present our strategies to the same client, back to back. And when I saw Rick walk into that conference room, his face went pale. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. Surprise, I said, grinning. I went first. I laid out a strategy so polished, so laser-focused on solving the client's pain points, that I could see the decision-makers nodding along before I was even halfway through. When I finished, one of them said, "This is exactly what we've been looking for." Rick tried to follow, but he was sweating bullets. His presentation was the same old recycled nonsense he'd been feeding clients for years. By the time he was done, even he knew he'd lost. 2 days later, I got the call. I'd landed the deal. A contract so huge it nearly tripled my company's revenue overnight. And Rick? Word got out that losing this client crippled his company. Layoffs started within weeks. But the cherry on top? Dan, the office clown who laughed at me when I quit, called me out of the blue. "Hey man," he said, suddenly all polite. I heard you're doing really well. I'm kinda looking for a new job. Maybe you have something?" I almost laughed into the phone. "Oh, Dan, remember when you laughed at me in that meeting? Yeah, I'm good. Try LinkedIn." Click. That moment. That was better than any paycheck. Rick's empire was crumbling, and I didn't even have to stoop to his level. I just outworked him, outsmarted him, and took back everything he thought I couldn't have. And I was just getting started. 6 months after landing that big contract, my life was unrecognizable. I'd moved out of my tiny apartment into a sleek loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My company was thriving. We had a growing team, repeat clients, and more work than we could handle. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about bills. I wasn't chasing paychecks. I was building a future. And the best part? Rick's company was barely hanging on. I heard through the grapevine that he'd lost 3 more clients to us. He'd laid off half his staff and was desperately slashing prices to stay afloat. I didn't even have to lift a finger anymore. His reputation was tanking all on its own. One night, I stood on my balcony with a glass of whiskey in hand, thinking about how far I'd come. I remembered that conference room, the laughter, the way everyone looked at me like I was a joke. If only they could see me now. My phone buzzed. It was Jake, the mentor who had believed in me from the start. "Proud of you, man," he said. "You turned their trash talk into fuel and built something they can't touch." He was right. The best revenge wasn't just stealing Rick's clients or watching his business crumble. It was knowing I'd grown beyond all of them. I didn't need validation from a toxic boss or fake coworkers. I had built a life on my own terms, and no one could take that from me. The next morning, I walked into our new office, a bright, modern space filled with people who respected and supported each other. My team smiled when they saw me. We were creating something real, something meaningful. As I sat at my desk, I thought back to Rick's words, "You'll come crawling back. People like you don't make it on their own." I smiled. Guess what, Rick? I made it. And I'm just getting started. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did he do the right thing?